Now, complaints about bullying and sexual harassment by MPs are to be handled differently in what's been described as a seismic shift for staff. The new system will be completely independent of MPs, with an expert panel replacing the committee of MPs that currently has the final say on action taken. The plan follows the recommendations of the retired High Court judge, Dame Laura Cox, whose report on bullying in Parliament was published in 2018. I asked Dr. Hannah White of the Institute for Government, who's a former Commons clerk, how the system works at the moment.
There's a new system which has been in place for a couple of years now, and fundamentally what happens is there's an independent officer called the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. She oversees an investigation of a complaint that's made, and she can determine some sort of lower level sanctions against an MP if it's something that's not deemed to be very serious. But if there's a more serious complaint, that will go to the Committee on Standards, which is a committee made up half of MPs and half of lay members, and they get to decide what the sanction should be against an MP.
So what's the big difference the new system will make?
The new system, which is out for consultation, would find that you have an independent panel of experts, and the most serious complaints, the most serious allegations, where the Commissioner does an investigation and says, I think there would be a serious sanction for this, so either suspension of an MP from the House or possibly their expulsion from the House, then that would go to that expert committee, and that committee would be completely independent. It wouldn't involve any MPs, and there's a question about whether it might involve a former MP, but it would be distinct so that people could have confidence that MPs weren't involved.
Everybody says this is long overdue. Why hasn't it been done before?
I think it has been very slow since the sort of Me Too scandal, the bullying scandal, first hit Westminster. A number of different inquiries took place. There have been 3 different big inquiries which have all found problems. And the first one to report more than 15 months ago recommended something like this, recommended we needed an independent process for investigating complaints and sanctioning MPs. And it's been slow. I think, partly, the House of Commons is slow about some of these things sometimes, but also there have been vested interests, I think, involved who it hasn't been in their interests for things to move much faster.
Does the fact that the Speaker has changed, has that made a difference?
I think it has certainly made a difference to the atmosphere around this question in Westminster. It was fundamentally really difficult while John Bercow was Speaker of the House of Commons, and there were these outstanding allegations of bullying against him which hadn't been investigated because the Committee for Standards, which I mentioned, had decided that the complaints were too old, so they shouldn't be investigated. And I think that was really problematic because it meant he couldn't defend himself against these allegations, which he denies.
Yep.
And the people who are making the allegations couldn't see them investigated, and that really undermined everyone's confidence that this system was really being the change that needed to happen.
You were a Commons clerk for a long time. Did you experience this sort of bullying culture?
I certainly experienced instances of inappropriate workplace behaviour. I once had a situation when I was a very new clerk. I was clerking a committee. I gave advice to the chair that a member should bring his remarks to a close because they were irrelevant. That member then found me in a remote corridor in the House of Commons later that day, shouted at me, sort of basically pinned me against the wall, did the whole, don't you know who I am? How long have I been here? What do you think you're doing? And I was really, shaken by that. I was lucky I was never sort of subject to any campaign of bullying, like some of my colleagues were, but I certainly saw inappropriate behaviour.
And if something like that happened in the future, are you more confident that someone in your position would have been able to deal with it, to get it sorted?
I think there were 2 things. Yes, I think people would feel more confident that they could take a complaint like that and have it taken seriously. But also there were definite efforts being made now to track the complaints being made. So if something looks like a pattern of behaviour, then the Parliamentary Commissioner can take account of that when she's looking into and investigating bullying complaints.